Hey there, I'm Alex Kidman, and this is a video that I honestly suspect about 5 people are going to watch. And that's okay, because I do like to answer my viewer questions, and this one kind of tickled my fancy, really. So yesterday, I put a video up about how to take the back off a feature phone, the HMD 110 in this case, and got a reader query asking me for an explanation of how I got into the journalism field, and tech journalism specifically, as well as some tips on how to join the industry. And, well, like I said, this is kind of a weird thing for me to answer, but I figured, well, I may as well. I've been doing this a long, long time. I started in tech journalism all the way back in 1998, and that was a long time ago. I try not to think about the numbers too much, but it's obviously, at this stage, some 27 years ago. And that was a very, very different industry at that time. So I got my start working for a computer magazine. Remember computer magazines? They're still around, actually. That's a little bit unfair. And I got my start, in fact, working for a computer magazine that still exists to this day, Australian Personal Computer, APC. And I came on as the web manager there. I didn't actually come on as a journalist. I came on in what was actually a kind of low-level role. Basically, my job at the time was to take chunks of the magazine that had been published the prior month and slowly put them up on the website. Because in 1998, the idea that you'd give away bits of your magazine for free on the web was still kind of new. It was still kind of an odd thing to be doing. And that was where I got my start. And then I slowly moved into writing a few game reviews and a few gadget reviews for them, eventually ending up as the reviews editor there for what's called the First Take section, so new product reviews, basically. I then shifted from there in 2001 to freelancing for a bit, then joined up at ZDNet Australia as the reviews editor there for a couple of years, before being the first editor at CNET Australia when that launched there. After that, I then freelanced again for a while before taking on the role of editor at Gizmodo Australia for a couple of years, and then freelancing again a bit more for a couple of years at Finder as their tech and telco editor, before freelancing yet again. Basically, across the span of my career, the thing that I've actually done the most is freelance, and I have been published across pretty much every major Australian masthead and newspaper, done TV and radio, a whole bunch of stuff. So there's the potted history if you cared. But I'm sure that the question really was more about how can I, and by I don't mean me, I mean you, break into tech journalism. And I've got to be honest here, my first reaction whenever anyone asks me that is to say, don't. And that might seem like I'm just trying to protect my patch. Oh, I don't want these youngsters coming into my... It's not about that, actually. I like the idea of diversity of voices and new viewpoints. I think that's actually really important and vital. Now, the reason I say don't is because the tech journalism industry is so different to when I started 27 years ago. The choices that you've got in terms of where you're going to work and how you're going to work are radically different. They really, truly are. Take magazines, for an example. As I said, APC, the magazine I got my start on, is still being published to this day, but it's being published with a staff that is an absolute fraction of what it used to be. And I don't blame the people working there. And a disclaimer, I still work with some of them from time to time, so I suppose I have a bias there, but I don't blame the people there for that. That's just the realities of modern economics and how all of that runs, because the practical side of this is that far fewer people are willing to pay for tech journalism. And I suppose I should put in a very simple plug/plea here that this is a big part of what I do these days. The video stuff that I do on YouTube, plus the writing that I do over Alex Reviews Tech, and that is reader supported by and large. So if my videos are of use to you, if this video is of use to you, please consider becoming a financial supporter. There's a link in the bio below. You know how this stuff goes, and you can choose to support me if you wish. But the point is, most people don't. That's just the practical reality of it. Most people are not willing to pay for that kind of thing. And that makes it a very tough field for an employer to pay employees, but an especially tough field for employees to get in on the ground in the first place, because there's just so many fewer jobs around. I also feel like I should highlight, because I think a lot of people go, oh, this is so cool. You just get gadgets and games. You just play with them all day long and that's your whole job. Well, actually, no. That's a fraction of the job, and the reality for you is it's probably going to be a very minor fraction of the job, because there's an awful lot more to it than that, and there's an awful lot of grind. You will, and I have ended up writing or creating content around things I really didn't like much or I really didn't care for because that's what's going to pay the bills. You may well end up being a journalist in a different field where an awful lot of your day is actually spent in much more mundane data crunching or research or just chasing stories that never end up happening. I've done that more times than I would care to count. It is a grind and it is a production grind as well. You have to be ready to produce. This is not something that you can really do casually if you're going to do it as a career. You've also got to think multi-skill, much, much more so than when I started out. When I started out, yes, you could just write and then, there were people who handled layout and photography and that kind of detail, and that's just not the case anymore. Those pared down headcounts, the fewer number of positions mean that the people that they do hire are the ones who do have lots of talent across photography and videography and maybe presentation, but also an eye for editing and just so many skills. It never hurts to sharpen those skills. It never hurts to practice. And of course, one of the beauties, I suppose, of the modern infrastructure for this kind of stuff is that, anyone can have a go. And you've kind of got to be ready for the fact that your first goes are not necessarily going to be that great. I look back at some of my early work and I cringe. It's not very good, and the bits that are good are largely good because way back in the day, we had sub-editors who would clean up my copy. If I look at the raw copy, there are some cases where I really didn't know what I was doing, but I got there in the end, or I largely got there in the end. I'd also say, look, honestly, not a bad idea to have a plan B because this is a really, really competitive field. A lot of people want to do it and a lot of people kind of think, oh, cool, if I do it, I'll just be the next big YouTube star and I'll just make millions of dollars out of sponsorships. Well, that too takes a very long grind, but that also takes you into a field that I'm not so certain is journalism anymore. And here, look, I've got to put a stake in the ground and just say, look, I think that good journalism really, really matters, but in this day and age, good journalism is hard to find. There's an awful lot of shysters and hucksters out there, people who will happily accept a sponsorship for this product or this plugin or that plugin, and I think you know what I'm talking about here, but defamation law, especially here in Australia, is a whole thing, so I won't go any further. But there's an awful lot of people out there who don't really work on journalistic principles. And if there was one final thing that I could impart, it would be to please be ethical and honest with your audience. If you don't know something, say so. Own up to your mistakes. I certainly try and do that. I certainly try not to make mistakes, of course, but they happen from time to time. Own up to your mistakes, but also be ethical and clear and transparent with your audience, because that is good journalism. That is actually taking things as they should be, not, oh, I'll give this a really glowing review because I want to get more products out of someone, or, oh, I won't mention that because they're a sponsor. No, stuff that. That's not good journalism. That's poor journalism. That's just marketing and PR fluff, basically. And sadly, you can make a living there. I know people who do, and again, I'm not going to name names because defamation law is a thing, but I would plead with you, if you are going to go into this field, consider the tenets of basic good journalism, of actually being ethical and transparent and honest, because there's an awful lot of stuff around that is not that. Anyway, this video has actually run longer than I intended to. I have no idea if it's going to be of use to you. I hope it actually answered the original viewer's question. And I will sign off simply by saying, have a wonderful day. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm obliged to say that under YouTube law. And once again, please consider becoming a financial supporter of the channel. Thanks for watching.